Rye. The following are extracts from my diary. April 28th. Going to Rye today for a few days with our mates Andy and Sarah. All I've been told about the place is that Spike Milligan lived there. Sarah is a big fan of Spike's, and the Battle of Hastings happened down the road. When we got there, we had some Battenberg cake. Sarah said Spike sometimes went days eating nothing but Battenberg cake. I hadn't had it before. I liked it. We went and had a walk to find out where everything is. We found a few decent pubs, a chippy, and did the usual walk around a graveyard. We nipped into Budgeon's supermarket and got some more Battenberg cake. Went to a really old pub that had signed pictures of celebrities on the walls. There was Chris Tarrant, Richard and Judy, and some fella off Bargain Hunt. Had an early night because I had a bad stomach from all the Battenberg cake. April 29th. Didn't sleep very well due to an owl that was sat in a tree outside. I don't know why they stay awake all night. If all they're going to do is sit there tooting, they could do that in the day. We went to the beach. We sat on the sand. I found a caterpillar. It was halfway between the dunes and the sea. I watched it for a bit. Like all caterpillars that I've watched, it didn't know which way to go. It kept changing directions. I don't see the point in them having all them legs and feet when all they don't know where they're going. It probably couldn't see properly because it was quite windy, so it was probably getting sand in its eyes. We went to a cafe that Sarah said is in the top 50 guide of best cafes in the UK. I said it must be around number 48, because if it was in the top 10 it would say so. Being in the top 50 isn't that impressive. I couldn't tell you what's at number 50 in the singles chart. It wasn't that good. We ordered some sausage and egg, butties, and were given a battered old tennis ball on a stick with a number 4 on it. Our order number. We sat at the back next to a really old, out-of-order Space Invaders machine. The butty was alright, but I've had better. There was a weird cat that hung around the cottage, so we let it in. I'm sure the place was haunted. They say that cats, dogs and horses can see ghosts. Nothing was on the telly, so I wrote in the guest book that we'd left the cottage a day early after we saw a ghost. We are going to Spike Milligan's grave tomorrow. April 30th. We got up early and set off to find Spike's grave. It was in a quiet little village. I've heard that he has a message on his gravestone that says, "I told you I was ill." We found it after about 20 minutes. Apart from his name, it was all in another language, so we didn't know if it said, "I told you I was ill." We went into a little cafe. I couldn't understand how a cafe in a quiet place like this could survive. That was until we got the bill. £30 for a few sandwiches and a pot of tea. The fellow who served us said that Spike used to go there. I bet it was the bill that killed him. Sarah said it would be good to go and find where Spike used to live. I like Spike Milligan, but I thought this was now getting out of hand. 3 hours later, we were stood outside his old house. I was dehydrated after having to walk miles to get to it. It was in the middle of nowhere. When we got back, I sat and watched snooker with Andy. I had a right bad headache. Suzanne and Sarah made Sunday dinner. They turned the snooker off to watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I said I've never understood why that fella opened a toy shop in a town where kids aren't allowed, because of the child catcher. Bad business. They told me to be quiet because I was ruining it. I decided to go and buy some ice cream from Budgeon's. It was shut. That's the problem with little village type places. I've stayed in Burnham Market recently. I needed some milk, but couldn't find any because everything shuts on a Sunday by 4 p.m, except the posh hat shop. Everyone else had Battenberg cake. I didn't bother because I was sick of it. Los Angeles. Our mates, Sarah and Andy, were out in LA. Andy was working out there and had a flat. So they said we could stay with them for free if we sorted our own flights. I was looking forward towards the trip because I've heard about Ripley's museum they've got out there. It's a museum that has all sorts of weird stuff in it, like a man with 7 eyes and people with small heads. I wanted to book tickets online for Ripley's, but Suzanne said we wouldn't need to. When we landed, I was that knackered I felt sick. I couldn't wait to get some sleep. Unfortunately, before I could get into bed, we had to pump it up. The flat only had 1 bedroom, so Andy and Sarah had bought a blown-up bed to go in the lounge. These beds should be given to the homeless people, as they come in a handy bag and are ideal to carry about. There are some homeless fellas who live on our street. I'm surprised they stay there because it's a really noisy street. On some nights, I've looked out of my bedroom window and noticed they've set up the bed and gone to sleep by 9:45. It's odd to think homeless people sometimes have an early night. They could also use inflatable beds in hospitals to sort out the bed shortage. Saying that, I think the shortage of beds at hospitals has now been put right. But that has created other problems. When I was in hospital last year with kidney stones, they had enough beds, but the problem now is not enough pillows. That's the problem with problems. You sort one out, and it makes another. I was rushed into hospital one night and ended up on a bed with no pillow. I reported it, and 5 minutes later the nurse turned up with one that was still warm, as it had just been removed from under someone's dead head. Anyway, it was taking ages to blow up the mattress, so we gave up when it was half full and just got on with it. We didn't sleep that well. Each time one of us moved, the rush of air in the mattress pushed the other one out of bed. It was like trying to sleep on a bouncy castle. I was chucked off it at about 3 a.m. and landed on the remote from a stereo, which turned on the radio, which then started blasting out Birdhouse in Your Soul by the mighty Be Giants. Every time I hear that song, I now think of that bloody pump-up bed. The next day, we went to the Ripley's museum. No one except me wanted to go. Suzanne was right. We didn't need to book. We were the only ones in there. I don't know why it isn't more popular. Years ago, seeing odd people at the circus was a night out, but it doesn't happen so much now. I think Channel 5 is responsible. A night doesn't go by without them showing a programme called The Boy with an Arse Like a Chimp, or The Girl with Arms for Legs, so there's no need to see a live freak show. I've been interested in odd things ever since I went to school with 2 lads who had big heads and webbed hands. When I tell people about these lads, they think they were related. They weren't though. People think they'd have knocked about with each other as well. They didn't. I used to think their big heads and webbed hands were caused by a chemical plant near where they lived. There was another kid who had a pigeon chest. It looked worse than it was when he wore his school uniform because his tie really stuck out. It exaggerated it. Then I saw the film Elephant Man, which is probably the saddest film ever. It's about a fella called Joseph Merrick, whose body was deformed from big head to toe. People gave him a hard time for not looking normal. These days, when people are born with 3 arms or 4 legs, doctors try to whip them off. I wonder if we're interfering with nature too much. Maybe the human body is trying to evolve to cope with modern life. We now live in a world where we have to multitask, so what could be better than having 3 arms? The Elephant Man had a really big, thick skull. Maybe this was nature's way of evolving us so we don't have to wear a helmet when we get on a bike. His brain would have that much protection, he wouldn't have needed one. I look at some of these disabilities as superpowers. Ripley's had some interesting things to see. In the first room, they were showing short films. There was one about a dog that spoke, and another about a bloke whose head was on backwards. He would have looked normal if he turned to look sideways. I like to imagine what it would be like to be in the position of someone like that. If my head was on backwards, I think I'd learn to play the piano, as pianists never face back from their audience, but he'd be able to. It was quite dark and dusty inside, with old pictures on the walls. There was one of the first Siamese twins playing chess with their doctor. That doesn't seem like a fair game to me. It didn't say who won. The proper interesting stuff was kept in a glass box. There was a sheep with 2 heads, a kitten with 2 heads, and a 5-legged cow. The weirdest thing was a man with 6 eyes. I wonder if he was unusually intelligent. I imagine he could have read more and taken in more information than most people do, because most of what we learn is taken in through the eyes. He probably never had to go on holiday to the same place twice, because he would have seen everything the first time. That was the only problem with Ripley's. They don't give you that much information, so you had to use your imagination a bit. We spent about 2 hours in there. I really enjoyed it. The others didn't. The apartment block we were staying in had its own pool. We got up early in the morning so we could use it before the locals were awake, because I wasn't comfortable walking about in swimming trunks in public. In LA, everyone is really muscly and healthy looking. I think it's the weather that does it. When it's hot and sunny, you eat healthy food. I didn't have one Twix while I was out there. Instead, I'd have a smoothie. I had loads of fruit that I'd never had before in them smoothie drinks. I do like fruit, but I find that some of it involves too much messing about to get into. I mainly buy fruit that I can have as a snack when I'm out for the day. Apples are good for this, bananas are good, plums are fine, pineapples are too much hassle. That's why you never see anyone buying pineapples in supermarkets. People should stop growing them. There's too much fruit knocking about these days. And I think that's why we're told to eat 5 pieces of fruit a day, is to get rid of it all. Once I was drinking some orange cordial and thought, this tastes a bit weird, and looked at the label. It wasn't just orange, they'd gone and slipped in some pineapple that they wanted to get rid of. This is happening more and more. I recently used some shower gel that had kiwi in it. That's another fruit no one wants. Oh, and pomegranates. What a load of hassle they are. I once watched my mum eating one with a needle, 1 seed at a time, while watching Dallas. She only got halfway through it. Like I said, we're not short of fruit. So why are we eating ones that are just made up of seeds? Stop growing them. Anyway, I didn't actually do much swimming in the pool in LA. I just floated about in it. When the local fellas got in, I felt forced out. They wore trunks that showed everything off, and they started doing fancy stuff. I'm sure they were showing off in front of Suzanne and Sarah. They did the butterfly stroke, which I think is daft. It takes too much energy to do it. And why is the swimming stroke named after a creature that's rubbish in water? There's loads of fish they could have nicknamed a name from. Suzanne was enjoying watching the other blokes too much, so I said it was time to go. She said that was unfair, because they had to look at a load of rubbish at Ripley's to keep me happy. So I said I wanted to go back and stare at the model of a woman with 4 tits and see how she liked it. We went to the beach, and it was just as bad there. It was full of bodybuilders who were greased up to the eyeballs. It's not normal building your body up like that. It doesn't even look good. It's like a human version of Pimp My Ride. Who decided that it's good to have a 6-pack? I think it's weird to see your insides through your skin. I don't like to be reminded that my body is crammed full of stuff. It makes me panic about how fragile I am. I do sometimes wonder if I'd look after my body more, if I'd be better looking though. We didn't go back to the beach. We drove to San Francisco along Highway 1, a famous road that goes up the coast. We stopped off at a place called Carmel. It was a little village that didn't seem real. Everything was perfect. They didn't have much there, just a few hat shops and a couple of shops that sold cakes for dogs. I went on a small beach. They had squirrels running about. People were feeding them all sorts of posh food. It annoys me a bit how people like squirrels but not rats. At the end of the day, they're the same thing, except that squirrels have had a better upbringing. I've noticed a big change in the squirrels in our local park. They're getting really fat because people keep feeding them Mars bars and biscuits, and all the sugar they eat is making them more aggressive. If you give them an acorn, they now turn their nose up at it. Every type of creature is changing its diet. I once caught some sort of little grub-type insect on my windowsill that was carrying bits of digestive biscuit I'd been eating. It's weird how me and that insect are miles apart in terms of lifestyle, yet we both like a biscuit. We used the car's sat-nav to get to San Francisco. I think sat-navs have taken the fun out of travelling. I like getting lost, because that's how you find new places. I found loads of new cafes in London just by wandering down the wrong street. Columbus would never have found America if he had a sat-nav on his boat. Suzanne had booked a basement flat in San Francisco. It was basic and smelt a bit musty, but was okay. The owner lived upstairs with her 40-year-old son, who was a bit odd. He stood outside in the garden looking at us through the window all the time. This was a quite good thing in a way, because he made us want to get out of the flat, which meant we saw a lot of stuff while we were in San Francisco. We did a trip around Alcatraz Island, which used to be a prison. It turned out to be the best tourist thing I've ever been on. They give you a little iPod type thing with headphones to listen to as you walk. There were interesting stories told by past inmates and facts about how people had to try to escape. It was nothing like the school trip I once went on to Styrel Woman's Prison in Cheshire. All we saw there was a five-a-side netball game played by women with tattoos, two of which were shouting, "Fuck off you shits," at us as we walked around the perimeter fence. Our teachers, Mrs. Turner, pretended it wasn't happening. I still don't know why they took us there. When the boat took us back to town, I noticed that San Francisco had a Ripley's Museum as well. Before I even had a chance to say, "Can we go in?" Suzanne said, "No." She said that once you've seen one two-headed sheep, you've seen them all. San Francisco is good. The only sad bit is that it seemed to have a lot of homeless people who are legless. When I say legless, I don't mean off their head on drink. I mean they didn't have any legs. They got around on skateboards, which makes me wonder why they decided to live in San Francisco, because it's not ideal for them, not with all those hilly streets about. One night we were in the flat watching telly, trying to ignore Brian looking through the window, when we saw our street on the news. One of the legless homeless had been shot by a policeman. The couple was saying how he thought the homeless fella had a shotgun. Turns out it was just a false leg. We decided to stay in that night and have a pizza. The next day we went on a bus tour around San Francisco. The driver was a bit annoying. He kept cracking jokes that you could tell he does with every busload of people. He was very pale with ginger hair, and he must have been quite proud of being ginger, because he also had a big ginger moustache. In England, people seem to get quite a bit of stick for being ginger. Even ginger cats look fed up and are normally fatter than other cats, probably because they turn to food for comfort. The bus driver took us to see an earthquake-proof building, which isn't that exciting on a day without an earthquake. When he took us to see where they filmed the kids' TV series Party of Five, Suzanne and Sarah remembered the programme. I didn't. He said, "Be careful if you get off the bus to take photos of the houses from Party of Five, as there's a lot of dog shit in the grass," and he didn't want us walking it onto his bus. He didn't stop talking for the whole tour. I remember thinking how much he sounded like Shaggy out of Scooby-Doo. He then pointed out where the gay area was. He said he didn't want to take us there, because it wasn't a very desirable or nice area, which I thought was odd, seeing as he'd just given us 10 minutes on Dogshit Hill. He also said, there are quite a few prostitutes in San Francisco, and some of them are lady boys, so you have to be careful, because you never know what you might be getting. And then laughed to himself. At least he was enjoying it. I like my time in LA and San Francisco. I had since found out that there's a Ripley's in Blackpool,